Salut guys, c'est Daniel. This week I'd like to propose a concrete screed texture, something easy to do and quick. We should be able to finish it in less than 30 minutes, base color and roughness included. We'll try to keep things simple by not using too many nodes and by thinking about graph optimization. In this hand, we'll avoid too many blurs, noises or any unnecessary nodes. It's going to be as economical as possible. So I think this tutorial is ideal for beginners as there are no difficult techniques involved. But making this kind of concrete screed requires a good attention to detail and some subtleness. Other than that, it should be quite easy to achieve. Before we begin, let's check the normal intensity here. 10 is okay. This blend node is set to copy at full opacity. We don't need tessellation for this project. So let's start. Here is the reference that we are going to follow. First, let's break it down and analyze what we've got to do. We see it's grainy. I see some rough, granular areas. Small pieces are chipped away from the top. We have Chorrel's marks also. So we'll begin by a somehow clean base layer with very few deposits and rough patches. In a second step, we'll break our base layer on some places just to bring a bit more complexity. Then we'll subtract focused noise to dig the top a little. We'll break it even more. Then it will be time to bring in some quick scratches and to subtract small and grungy details. After that, we'll make some Chorrel's marks, and to finish it off, we'll give the whole thing some relief to make it look more interesting, not flat. Okay, let's start. Step 1. I'll use a height blend to combine two noises. I prefer the height blend over the classical blend node with set with a max lighten mode. The height blend offers more control and you don't need levels node to play with the intensity. It's simpler. The fractal sums are chip nodes, and I like them, so let's use two of them, two of the cleanest ones, the fractal sum 1 and the fractal sum base. The sum 1 at the top and the base and the sum base at the bottom. That gives us some grainy deposits. And we have the rougher spots. I'll play with the offsets, but the default value seems good to me. We're off to a good start. Step 2. Let's break this in some way with a min darken blend, just to add a subtle level of variety to our top. Let's use black and white spots 2 for this. No need to scale it, because scaling is very expensive. Let me show you the difference. It's not cheap, and I prefer the previous result with the normal scale anyway. So let's bring back the scale to 1. Okay, good. For now it's too much. Well, I think it's too much. But now it's just a matter of bringing the opacity down in the blend node. Okay, better. We need another blend node, but this time with a subtract. We can take in entry the same black and white spots too, with just a levels node to keep some control over the effect. Then I'm going to play with the opacity. Let's check the reference. Okay, I'm satisfied with what we have so far. Step 4. Let's bring in some scratches with the scratches generator. The spline number, 2000, 2K. Some spline distortion. Less distortion random. I'd like a greater spline width. And start plus end in the fade mode. Alright, that gives us a more natural look. Let's put in a directional warp to break the scratches a little. Give them some jagged lines. And we can feed it with the fractal sum 1. Its intensity must be low. Let's blend our base with the scratches using a subtract blending mode and a very low opacity, like 0.05. That's nice, but I feel like there are too many of them. So we can either bring down the spline number or use the levels node. Let's see what the less expensive option is here. Okay, the levels node is effective. Now let's put it aside and play with the spline number only. 500. The gain in processing time is significant, and we can still use the levels node because it's very cheap. Vary the opacity in the blend node until you find something that you like. It could be interesting to try different lighting situations also, and even play with different maps. You'll gauge your work more easily. I think I'll bring up the spline number to 1000 and maybe more spline distortion. Okay. Okay, step 5. Time for another blend node, as usual. Subtract. It's time for something a bit messy. So grunge map will do the job. Maybe grunge map 12. We don't need much details, so let's invert it. And bring the balance and contrast way down, near 0. The random seed. I think I like the number 5. Then plug it into our blend node and bring the opacity down, near 0.1 or 0.2. Okay, nice. Step 6. We are getting there. So what is the reference telling us now? It's important to keep coming back at it. Okay, I think we really need those Chorels marks now. So it's time for another blend. Subtract. This part is going to be more technical, but still basic level. Well, let's start with a shape. A rectangle. X 0.3 and Y 0.1. Okay, looks good. A quick warp with the black and white spots 2 as the gradient input. Very small intensity of 0.01. Then a directional warp, still fed by our black and white spots too. The intensity must be high. Let's try 500. Okay, interesting result. But not what we are looking for. So let's try 100. That will do it. But something is lacking. I try transform 2D and stretch the width by 500%. Okay, we can use that. Let's send this to a tile sampler. Pattern input. Okay. Let's play with the size random, greater scale, scale random, position random, sum offset, rotation random, color random at maximum. Okay, let's bring the scale up again. Okay, time to plug the marks now. 0.1 for the opacity should be the right value. I'd like for some of them to be larger. So in the tile sampler, I just bring the scale up. Okay, that's nice. I can feel it. But I'd like to add a touch. The idea would be to have more intensity in the middle of the mark, more depth, and less on the sides. We can achieve that with another blend node after the directional warp, set to multiply, and fed by a gradient linear 2. Tiling 2, and rotation 90 degrees. Now we just need to offset our shape with a transform 2D on the x-axis. What about a levels node to accentuate our previous effect? Now let's look at the result carefully. I think it's interesting but not good enough. We need some grooves in our marks. So let's make that with a new blend, multiply. Let's copy this transform node and stretch it even more. 500%. Let's use it with our blend and try some opacity values. Maybe bring the opacity up here in the subtract node. Yes, better. We are closer to the reference. So just play with different opacity values and see how it feels. Maybe less random rotation in the tile sampler. Step 7, we could give it a more battered look, I guess, with a multiply and our good old black and white spots too, that we are gonna send through a blur node and maybe add an auto levels. As you can see, where there are black areas in the foreground, a high opacity tends to polish our screed. That's not a bad thing, but we still want some roughness. At least we can see the small bumps appearing, so that's a nice addition. Just find the opacity value that you like. I'd like to add a histogram range here between the first two blends, just to clean our result a bit more. And let's play again with the scratches and their blend opacity. Now I can try some different geometries and environments for the rendering. And let's have a look at the reference again. Okay, it's pretty close in my opinion. Tell me what you think in the comments. If you would have done something differently, I'd like to know. It's time to bring some color to it and work with the roughness. It's gonna be very simple and quick. For the color, let's bring in a curvature smooth. You can use a different normal map in order to have some control over the intensity. I think it's important. Let's try an intensity of 5. Let's bring in auto levels and a gradient map. I have some bitmaps here in the resources folder. I'll use the one with the pebbles. Just want some light grays and some greens. Then I will blend this with a copy node. And bring our final blend in the background. We need a gradient map, but only to convert it to a color map. So I won't use the gradient editor. We can add another level of detail with a new blend, still using the copy blending mode. And I will use this blur HQ here and just send it through a gradient map before plugging it. I'll try to use this rod here with the gradient editor. Okay. Now we should use a HSL node or a simple levels node to brighten it. You can use the sphere 2 tiles or the rounded cylinder to see it differently. Okay, cool. For the roughness, we can start with this auto levels, the one which is after the curvature smooth. And for precaution, use a levels node to keep some control. When working with the roughness map, I like to use the panorama map to gauge how the roughness of the material interacts with the light. Now we can organize the graph by making some frames. Frame for the noises, a frame for the trowel's marks, and at least a frame for the relief part here, and one for the color map also. As we can see, the only costly nodes are the tile sampler and the Grange map. It's difficult not to use the tile sampler, and the Grange map, it's kind of lazy in a way, sure, but it looks good. But it's okay, with the settings that we used, it computes in less than 200 milliseconds, so it's acceptable for a Grange map. Okay guys, we are finished. This texture is done, and it's complete. There are still a lot that you can do to polish it. You can try different values and still work on more details, but it's very decent for something done in less than 30 minutes. It's a cool result, I think. So we made a concrete screed with a small amount of nodes, and I like when a graph is simple and well organized. Okay, let's take some time to polish it a bit more. If you have any questions or suggestions, I'll be happy to read them. Thanks for watching, and see you next week for another texture. Bye bye!